Big day down in South Carolina. Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina, he will officially announce his candidacy this afternoon for the 2024 presidential election. His campaign is going to test whether his more optimistic vision for America's future is going to work. He emphasizes, his, hard scrabble roots, rejecting the whole notion of systemic racism, and says, Kevin, that he's a perfect example how anyone in this country can rise to the top with hard work, and there's opportunity for everybody in the United States of America.
Yeah, so Florida Governor Ron DeSantis will enter the race this week. So will Senator Tim Scott. I like Tim Scott. His Faith in America tour, it shares a lot of common sense ideas we could really use in this country right now. As the only black Republican in the U.S. Senate, he's big on the ABCs in public education, not so much the CRT in public education. I don't know if Scott can catch the front runners, but for me, I think the race just got a whole lot more interesting. Mm-hmm. Join us now is Roshini Rajkumar, political strategist and host of the Crisis Files podcast. Good morning. How are you?
Hi, Kevin. You were right. It definitely got more interesting, and I feel like it's going to be really interesting to watch every step from how he announces today, going back kind of the homeland to do that, and just so many good parts of Tim Scott's narrative.
Yeah, and, his conservative values really should strike home in the Republican Party, but as a black Republican, does Scott's candidacy impact or adjust the issues in this presidential race on the Republican side and in the general election?
I really think it does, because as far as, at least as we sit right now, we have most people in this race, and if we are calling Trump and Biden the front runners for either party, you've got two people there who, there's kind of a lot of entitlement and a lot of sort of baggage that comes with both of those people. And Tim Scott was smart. He and his team were smart in putting out the backstory and really trying to feature that backstory, that he did really come from humble beginnings. And a lot of people can relate to being raised by a single parent. They can relate to worrying about bills being paid, worrying about their education, maybe not even being able to get an education, that's a question mark. So I think more of the country can relate to Tim Scott, regardless of what color he is and regardless of what party he is. So that's what's really going for him right now. Of course, every step will be very watched and highly scrutinized, but he's, I guess, off to the races in a really good way.
Yeah, I think you're right. Most of the country can really relate and resonate with his message. But what about specifically the African American community? Because he says, listen, I'm a living testament to the reality that America is for anyone. And that includes African Americans, of which I'm a member of that community. Does that resonate with the African American community who might feel stuck in some way or some fashion?
I think it is going to resonate. I think it's going to resonate with those who are more like the Tim Scott, who pursued the American dream, are living the American dream, but maybe they've been a little afraid to speak up because parts of the BLM narrative doesn't go with that. And then there are also people out there that maybe really want the hope, and they don't want to live in destitution or other ways that aren't the American dream. Let me just put it that way. And Tim Scott truly is that person of hope. I mean, when you think back to Barack Obama's campaign and how he really went grassroots, he got so much credit for what he did on that grassroots side. And I see Tim Scott is going to spend quite a bit on the digital side. That's kind of the new grassroots of our modern era. He is going to pull some people who've maybe not been involved, who've been very unaffected or disaffected, or however you want to put it, and maybe get them excited about politics or even draw them into this kind of a campaign that they feel like they have a seat at the table, or at least someone who looks like them has a seat at the table and will get them more jazzed up. So again, I see a lot of positive in this candidacy, and I like it when things are shaken up. I think you guys know that about me from all these years coming on with you. And it's definitely interesting for me as an analyst to watch this.
I saw a poll this weekend. It said it was talking about who has the best chance of beating Joe Biden, and it said Donald Trump leads Joe Biden head-to-head by 7-point margin. Ron DeSantis is deadlocked if he were to run against Joe Biden. I think it'd be really interesting to find out how people think Tim Scott would do versus Joe Biden, because I think Tim Scott might be the kind of candidate who could do best in a head-to-head against Joe Biden if he could get there.
I think you're absolutely right. And one of the things, not that I want August to come too quickly, but that August 1st GOP debate will be very interesting to see if they do all participate. I think that is where we're really going to see. I mean, look, Tim Scott is a political veteran in his own right. He's not some newbie to politics. He's 57 years old. I mean, just a perfect age to be running for president. You've lived some life. You've held some offices. He was a business owner in his past. I mean, and another big thing going for him, Tom and Kevin, is that he's the ranking member of the Senate Banking Committee. Well, guess what's so messed up in our country right now? It's the banking industry and everybody worried about their own accounts. So here's someone I would recommend that he lead with some of that. He uses some of that as a way to connect with Americans. Like, look, I've got your back. I'm watching these guys. That kind of an attitude.
He's got the chops. He's got the story, too, and I think he's got the savvy as a political he's not a novice in any sense. It's interesting how this is shaping up because one of his rivals in the race is going to be Nikki Haley, and that's Trump's, of course, former UN ambassador. She played a pretty pivotal role in Tim Scott's political career. She was the governor of South Carolina, and she appointed him to the U.S. Senate. Do you think that friendship is going to be strained at all, become more hostile as a result of him stepping into the ring later today?
Yeah, that's a really, really interesting point, Tom. She did appoint him back in 2013. You know, I think it just shows, I mean, they can make a bunch of ad campaigns for South Carolina. There's something going on in South Carolina. The two names that have, in their own rights, really gone to prominence and at a national level could possibly both be Republican contenders for president. I mean, I think that says a lot about the state of South Carolina. I think it says some good things about Nikki Haley's judgment appointing him back in 2013. And I'm hoping that they both have the class and the experience to just keep it very productive and professional. And knowing what I know about the two of them, obviously I don't know them personally, but it seems like they might love this healthy competition and this kind of eye on South Carolina.
Well, you mentioned that August debate. Do you think Donald Trump will feel pressured to participate? He said he's not going to do it. He doesn't intend to debate. He says he doesn't need to. He's too far ahead. Do you think with Scott getting in, Nikki Haley, DeSantis, do you think he will feel like he's got to be on that stage?
I think so. And I really want to see him on that stage because that's when you show us, not when you're one of 16 and you could maybe kind of get lost in that, way back when he first ran. If there are maybe a handful of Republican contenders and Donald Trump is not on that stage, that does send a negative signal to those of us out there who are still undecided, to those who really question, well, who are you as a politician? What do you really stand for? Here's your opportunity. So I'm really excited to see what happens on August 1st. I believe Donald Trump has to be on that stage.
So right now, Tim Scott, he's 1% or so in the polls, but he's raised more than $20 million, which is pretty significant amount of cash this early in a campaign. Do you think that money, combined with his, I guess, more refined tone in his conservative message, do you expect his poll numbers to go up?
I do. I'm not a big fan of the polls. And as my mom always said, slow and steady wins the race. And that's who we've got right now. We've got the turtle, but he's coming out, really well. And if he is smart about how he takes each step, he's smart about who he advises him, and he maybe doesn't listen to the polls as much, and he doesn't get too entrenched in negative social media posts. I think if he runs the campaign he wants to run, I mean, when we're talking about faith and optimism and, America loves an underdog story, Tom, I think he's got a huge, huge winning recipe to make some real waves, possibly even win the Republican nomination.
Tim Scott, the turtle, that would look good on bumper stickers.
I know.
Yeah, another nickname coming his way. And one thing I learned from Looney Tunes is that the tortoise always beats the hare. So good luck to Tim Scott. The announcement coming later today. Roshini Rajkumar, always love having you on, the host of the Crisis Files podcast. Of course, attorney and political strategist. Thanks so much.